What's up guys, this is Enrique with VanUp. Today we're gonna install a Razor Rack onto a Ram ProMaster. Behind me is the customer's Travado. Now this particular van does have a ladder bracket on the driver's side door. The customer has specified that they do want the Razor Rack on the driver's side, meaning that bracket and ladder have to be relocated to the passenger side. These instructions do apply for vehicles with or without anything on the driver's side door or passenger side door. As far as the tools required for this installation, I have a variety of box wrenches, drill bits, and ratchet sockets needed for this install. You will need an impact with a Phillips bit, two different sizes of drill bits. I have an 1/8 inch bit here. It will also be used in the impact, and a 3/8 bit here to be used as the final drill hole size for the installation of the Razor Rack. You will need a hammer of some type, a large chisel, a 7/16 box wrench, a 9/16 box wrench, and a 5/8 box wrench. Also, you'll need a small picking device of some sort. Here I have a 45-degree scribe. You will need an Allen. This is a 7/32 Allen and a 5/8 socket. You will need also a basic hand ratchet with a small extension on there. One thing I did want to mention about tools that will be needed for the job that were previously unlisted is an 11/16 socket with a short extension or some sort of an extension and a center punch in order to punch the locations of the holes that need to be drilled so your drill bit doesn't walk when you're drilling. This customer has chosen to install the Razor Rack with the tire carrier on the driver's side of their rear door. Now this is 3 different boxes, but only 2 part numbers. The Razor Rack itself includes the long rails and the base plate. That's 1 part number, 2 different boxes. And the tire carrier is a part number of its own. After unboxing the 2 Razor Rack base boxes, this is what's included inside those 2 boxes. These here are the 2 long rails that will go vertical on the driver's door. This is the panel that goes at the very top of those 2 long rails. The kit does include 2 pieces of clear bra that will be used at the top of the door to protect the original paint. 2 thick rubber gaskets are included. That goes at the bottom of the Razor Rack to protect the original paint or finish of the door. Also a variety of different hardware. Most of this hardware will be used. Some of it will be left over for additional accessories that you do decide in the future to bolt onto your Razor Rack. Moving on down the line, we do have a doorstop kit. Now this vehicle did include a doorstop kit in it already because of the factory ladder that was installed by Winnebago. So we're gonna go ahead and leave this packaged up. We're gonna save it for a later date. Another product that is included in this kit is the inner door brace. Now it will go on in this shape onto the inside of the door panel. And to access it, you do remove the inner door panel of the rear door. Now to begin assembling the Razor Rack, I've already removed everything that I won't be currently using at the moment to get it out of the way. Our first step is to assemble the top base plate onto the Razor Rack. This is done with 4 7/32 Allen bolts, 8 washers, 4 lock washers, and 4 standard nuts. Now this base plate's hardware does go in a particular order. You have a flat washer on the bolt side. On the nut side, you have the nut itself, a lock washer, and a flat washer on the inside. Once all 4 have been hand tightened, ensure that the bolts are at the top of the slot. You are using gravity to its advantage. and the base plate is hanging at the very top of the slot on this razor rack. Once you're at that step, you'll take your 9/16 box wrench and your 7/32 Allen and go ahead and tighten those up. Now that the razor rack has been assembled, it's time to start unboxing the tire carrier and get that set up onto the razor rack and get ready to hang this thing onto the door. Okay, now that the tire carrier has been unboxed, this is what it's included. You have your backing plate or your base plate for the tire carrier itself. That'll run horizontal left to right onto the razor rack. You have the tire carrier itself with a outer and inner assembly, and then all the included hardware. Again, just like the razor rack, you do have a few spare nuts and bolts as far as the hardware goes. So everything should be included in that kit as far as everything that you will need to install this onto the razor rack. This step is required for the tire carrier installation onto the razor rack itself. If you are getting a tire carrier on your razor rack, stick around and watch this portion of the video. If not, skip to the time above and you'll be able to fast forward to the next step of the razor rack installation. One of the steps required for this tire carrier is the pressing in of these studs into the tire carrier plate itself. Now you could easily do this by hammering this in, or if you have the tool, you could use a hydraulic press to press these in. We don't have that here at this shop, so we use a basic towel to protect the finish of the product and hammer these in. Now that the backing plate of the tire carrier has been installed in the same fashion as the base plate of the razor rack, we're going to go ahead and take our grade 8 hardware and install it in the same fashion as all the rest of the hardware. Flat washer and bolt on the top side, flat washer, lock washer, and nut on the underside. Now, one tool that I failed to mention in the beginning, you will also need an 11/16 box wrench. That is the nut size of the grade 8 hardware. The bolt size is 5/8. Now we move on to installing the outer portion of the tire carrier. That'll simply slip on right there. And there's 6 included grade 8 bolts, nuts, flat washers, and lock washers that will go in these 6 slotted holes. Now, one of the cool features of the tire bucket for this razor rack is, depending on the back spacing of your wheels, this tire bucket does telescope to match that offset on your wheels, or the back spacing on your wheels. Now, since this is a stock size wheel with a stock back spacing going on this Travato, I know that this customer will need their tire bucket extended all the way. One of the last steps in preparing this razor rack for installation, we have had a few customers in the past, and it has been a little problematic, where the top bend right here that grabs the top of the door, this bend is a little too sharp. So there's too many degrees of bend in this top portion. What we have done in the past is take a large, wide chisel and chisel this open a little bit to where it'll grab the top of the door a little better than the way it currently sits. Another option is to take a razor blade to the top portion of the door and cut back some of the silicone or glue that they've used from the factory to allow for this bend to sit correctly at the top of the door. Now, prior to starting the opening process, you do want to make sure that your razor rack is protected. So put it on something soft surface that isn't going to scratch the finish of the powder coat as you're hammering this open. Now you just take your chisel and whatever hammer you have around, whether it's a ball peen or a sledgehammer, something heavy and stout, and just hammer this open. So now with the razor rack prepped, we're going to install the clear bra on the top of the door, the same width as the razor rack top brackets. The purpose of the clear bra is to protect the original paint of the van from any scratches that may occur with the razor rack making contact with the original paint. So I got 30 and a half, close to 30 and a half inches wide. Now I take that measurement, transfer it to the top of the door, and make a mark at 30 and a half inches, and clean the surface and apply my clear bra at that same width. Here I just have a little isopropylene alcohol mixture, cut 75-25 with water. This is just really going to clean the surface of the door, make that clear bra stick really well. I cleaned this prior to taking my measurement because isopropylene alcohol does remove any Sharpie marks, so I do want to clean the surface prior to marking my measurement. I'm going to put a small mark here at 30 and a half inches and a small mark on the left side at the end of the tape measure. Now the razor rack does want to sit on this far edge of the door of the van. That'll allow for the most clearance away from this center seam when you go to close the door. It'll give it the most clearance possible. So our measurement is now marked at the top of the door. One last measurement I'm going to grab is the depth of this top bracket, where it's going to be sitting in relation to the door. I do have roughly about 4 inches, almost on the dot, as far as how far down the door it's going to be touching. Now that part is important because we do have our 2 pieces of clear bra. That 4 inches I've already marked and located. This is going to be the 4 inches that are hanging down. The rest of the clear bra is going to be overlapping the top portion and curling over on the inside of the door. Since this top bracket will be wrapping over the door, it is important to make sure your clear bra does go clean over the top and wrap on the inside of the door. With the marks both on my clear bra and on the top edge of my door, I can now install my clear bra itself onto the door. One pretty neat tool is a vinyl application tool. It's called a squeegee. Don't necessarily have to have this. You can install the clear bra with a credit card or something, you know, a flat surface that's going to squeegee out all the air. This is a dry apply clear bra compared to most clear bras that are wet apply. This one is dry apply. So I just line up that top mark with the top of the door, find my width mark that I previously placed on the door, make sure that lays down nice and even, and then squeegee out all the air. And roll it over the top. Again, squeegeeing to the door, getting all that air out of those pockets. You will have a little bit of excess on the back side. You can trim that back with a razor or a pair of scissors or something. Get that excess off. You don't need too much of it. Probably about ½ inch will do on the back side, keeping that 4 inches. So here in a minute, I'm going to trim that off. I'm going to go ahead and get the other side put on, and then we'll be ready to start hanging this razor rack onto the door, get our holes drilled, and finish up this process. All I'm doing now is just removing the excess of this clear barrel that won't be necessary. Get yourself a razor blade, box cutter, pair of scissors, something of the sort. Run that across. Peel back that unused portion of the clear barrel. Now with the razor rack fully assembled, our door prepped and ready to go, we're gonna hang our razor rack onto the door, make our marks for our 4 bottom holes that we need to drill out, get that spacing, get those marks down, and then we'll be able to remove the razor rack, drill our holes, and then finally do our final install of the razor rack. So the next step is to now mark the bottom of the razor rack where there's 4 slotted holes are at. I'll take a Sharpie, go ahead, find the center of that slot, right in the middle. Mark where those bolts are gonna go through those holes. Now, once that's marked, go ahead and remove your razor rack to prevent any damage happening in the drilling process. Set it aside, again, where you had it previously, sitting on a blanket so it doesn't get damaged. And we'll go ahead and drill that out. The final hole size does need to be 3/8, but I'll go ahead and center punch it, do a pilot bit, and then the final drill size of 3/8. With our 4 holes drilled at the bottom of the door, now we go ahead and start the process of removing any inner door panel that's on here. On this van, there are several different styles as far as the door panel being held onto the door. On this van, it's the original factory panel. Sometimes these manufacturers, the one that build these out into an RV, they'll replace these panels with something different. So there are different styles of pins that are holding this panel onto the door itself. This one in particular has these little plastic covers that go on here. So you take your scribe, get it behind this clip and pry it off. Hang on to these, they're really easy to lose, but we will be reinstalling them at the end of this process. After that, it's a few Phillips screws. I've already removed most of the screws. I left 2 just for the sake of the video. So go ahead and remove your Phillips screws and remove your door panel all the way. Now the inside of the door does have some form, or will have some form of insulation. Go ahead and remove your insulation, get that out of the way, and then we're able to see our 4 holes that we previously drilled. With that exposed, now we'll be able to reach the nuts and bolts, essentially all the hardware that's going to be holding these razor racks onto these doors. Okay, with our razor rack finally installed onto the door, this is where our 2 rubber gaskets come into play. Again, the hardware was included with the kit. It's going to be your 4 Allen bolts, 4 flat washers, 4 lock washers, and 4 standard nuts, along with several self-tapping screws. But anyways, the Allen bolts are going to go from the outside towards the inside. You take your rubber gasket, slide it behind the razor rack. Again, this is just to protect the paint of the van and give it something to squish down on. Line that up with the holes that you've already drilled. Make sure it's nice and square on there, and send your bolts through. Repeat the process on the other side. And now we are ready for the inner portion of the razor rack install. these inner door brackets are the same shape, size, and width, so they are interchangeable with each other. There is no correct left or right or top or bottom, just as long as they do sit in this orientation right here on the inside of the door. So we'll take our first door brace with 2 flat washers, 2 nuts, and 2 lock washers. Go ahead and install that on the inside of the door. Right now we're just installing these finger tight for the time being. Okay, so we have our self-tapping screws all the way installed. Next is to tighten up the 9/16 nuts and the 7/32 Allen bolt. So this is easier with a buddy on the opposite side. It is doable, however, by yourself. So reach back on this side, install your Allen onto the head of the bolt, place your box wrench into place. I do have a ratcheting box wrench, ratcheting 9/16 box wrench, so it makes it a little easier when you're doing it by yourself. Okay, our Razor Rack is fully installed and tight. Now we can reverse engineer this, essentially taking everything that came off of the door back in, putting it back in. Starting with the insulation. Whatever insulation was in there needs to go back in place. That's what's gonna keep you nice and toasty on the inside of the van. So install your insulation. After that is reinstalling your door panel, inner door panel. Now our little caps that came off come back into play. This is why I was mentioning to hang on to these. These do need to snap back into place to finish the inner door panel. All right guys, that completes the Razor Rack installation and the tire carrier installation on a Ram ProMaster. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Please like our social media pages, and thanks for tuning in.